Welcome to this special event, the second online event for Australia for UNHCR's new Leading Women Fund. Hello, I'm Naomi Steer, National Director of Australia for UNHCR. I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of lands right around Australia, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. And welcome to all our wonderful supporters joining from every corner of Australia and around the world. And welcome to anyone that is joining us for the first time. I hope you are safe and well, and I can really assure you, you're going to be part of a wonderful conversation today with four amazing women. And I would like on that to extend a welcome to our special guests. Nabila Alzawahri, a former Syrian refugee resettled in Sydney and now a caseworker with Settlement Services International. Hi, how are you? Great to see you. Irene Omondi, UNHCR Head of Office in Zaatari Refugee Camp, joining us all the way from Jordan. Hi, Irene.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Marta Dusseldorp, actor, so well loved, and Australia for UNHCR Special Representative, joining us all the way from Hobart, Tasmania. Welcome.
Thanks, Naomi. Hi.
And of course, we're very privileged to have our own Deputy High Commissioner for Refugees, Kelly T. Clements, all the way from Geneva. Welcome, Kelly.
Hello, good morning from Geneva. Thanks, Naomi.
Thank you. The Leading Women Fund is something I've been working towards since founding Australia for UNHCR 20 years ago. Like many things, displacement is a gendered issue. 4 out of 5 refugees are women and children. Yet women are still the most marginalised in many communities and face enormous hardships. And we're going to talk about some of those issues today. As UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, gender equity is the unfinished business of our time. From access to education, paid work, and even job permits, refugee women face significant barriers. That's why we need the Leading Women's Fund to mobilise resources that enable these women to live more financially secure and safe lives, and in doing so support their families and indeed their whole communities. The Leading Women's Fund has developed into a multifaceted initiative aimed at engaging women in Australia to support refugee women through raising funds, sharing skills, and opening up networks of support both here in Australia and globally. We're so honoured to be joined today by 4 remarkable women, and as I've said, our Deputy High Commissioner, Kelly T. Clements. Kelly has been closely involved with refugees and displacement issues overall throughout her 30-year career, including in senior leadership roles on humanitarian issues in Asia and the Middle East for the US government. She was seconded to UNHCR in Bangladesh in 1992 and joined UNHCR as Deputy High Commissioner in 2015. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you.
Before we start talking about the particular issues around women and girls that UNHCR deals with every day, could you talk a little bit about yourself and what drew you to this organisation, and in particular the cause of refugees and displacement?
Thanks very much again. I'm delighted to join you all this morning in Geneva. Actually, this is obviously a topic near and dear to my heart. And Naomi, you mentioned actually in your kind introduction, probably the reason why I'm sitting here talking with you all today. And it was the experience that I had in Bangladesh in 1992 when we had hundreds of thousands of Rohingya fleeing Myanmar into Bangladesh, into one of the poorest parts of Bangladesh. And of course, they were coming with very little. And I was part of that emergency response on secondment, and I had a couple of jobs. One was doing a little bit what Irene is doing now in Zaatari in Jordan, but looking at protection issues. And we had, for UNHCR at that point, a very, very young refugee women's policy that we were trying to test to see if it worked. And I had a lot of contact during that time with refugee women, with Rohingya women, and had time in the camps, sitting in their huts and their very slim shelters to listen to their stories, to hear what happened to them in Myanmar, and frankly, the tragedy that they left behind, because many of them left family members or had family members that were taken from them. And there's a particular woman that really stands out to me during those early days, and she was someone who was supporting 3 kids on her own, and had particular trouble in the camp. And we worked over a period of weeks to try to make sure that she could get the food ration card that she needed for her children. And she stays with me almost 30 years later. And so I think that was probably one of those early experiences where I realized what a difference we can make as together as the UN Refugee Agency, and what contribution I might make in the future.
Kelly, you've been working in this era over 30 years, and you've just mentioned some of your early experiences. When we were talking the other day, I was saying when I first started visiting refugee camps in the late 90s, you know, gender wasn't really on the radar at all, and basic things like where you put the trees and having proper lighting, and which all sort of reflect then back on security for women, weren't there then. And of course, you wouldn't set up a camp without, or support refugees without those kind of considerations. But how have you seen the humanitarian community respond to the needs of women over that time, and UNHCR in particular?
Oh my goodness! I think in some ways we are still challenged a bit by these issues, but we've come a long, long way. And we've really moved from a place of we don't look at women as beneficiaries, as people that are receiving aid. We look at them as decision makers, as people we need to keep right in the center of our work. Rather than designing those camps you were talking about, Naomi, around them, they are the ones that are saying, what is it that they need to support themselves and their families? You know, we're in a situation now where we have a large number of women who head households, who are trying to provide for their families. All sorts of requirements, from food to clothing to basic health care to trying to find education for their children. And so this, you know, the decision-making process and really putting refugee women at the center of our response in terms of programs, and looking particularly at some of their vulnerabilities from a protection point of view, that has jumped forward enormously in those decades. We still have much more work to do. But this is something that for UNHCR is fundamentally important to the way that we protect and aid.
Yeah. And right now, you know, and I guess it's typical of UNHCR's work. Again, I talk about when I first started working to support UNHCR, we might have one major emergency every 2 or 3 years. Now the organisation is dealing with at least 5 or 6 major emergencies in 1 year. And now we have the added complication of the COVID epidemic, you know, really extraordinary times for humanitarian organisations and the people they support. Could you talk in the context of COVID, some of the work that UNHCR is doing to support women?
Thank you, Naomi. Yeah, this has been an extraordinary year, frankly, for the planet. But for an agency like ours, working in over 130 countries in 500 different field locations, we've got about a 17,000 strong workforce, including Irene, proud to say, with over 1,000 partners. And you've just said it. We are in emergency context. We're in places where displacement, unfortunately, has marked a generation. And we have a very young population of refugees, where with COVID, and particularly looking at a scenario where 4 out of 5 refugees that we serve are women and children. So they are at the center of what we're trying to do. And in the COVID situation, not only have we seen the global economy melt down, but we've also seen a whole generation of learners out of school or not able to access. And this for women, the ability to be able to support themselves and to put their kids into school, education becomes fundamentally important. So for COVID, a couple of things that we've looked at, clearly protection is first and foremost. How do we access those women that we were assisting, which with the restrictions makes it difficult too. We're using all kinds of technology to do that, trying to get information out there, make sure that programs are still functioning. But those challenges are great, frankly, because the risk of sexual and gender-based violence in a situation like this increases. When people are in lockdown, sometimes the scenarios that they were escaping become exacerbated. So this is something we're extremely concerned about. Even before the pandemic, 1 out of 3 women were victims or survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. This is something that has heightened risk in a pandemic-related scenario. So the protection issues are huge. Education, and again, going back to girls that are particularly impacted, we have some 5.6 million refugee kids and youth that are now out of school. Add that to 2.8 million refugee children that are not in school. Where we're particularly concerned, Naomi, is that some research we've done with the Malala Fund, 50% of girls, particularly in secondary education, may never go back. So this is something that obviously deeply concerns us, both in terms of the socioeconomic impact, the loss of livelihoods, and the education impacts, not to mention health.
Yeah, and I have to say they are the 3 areas that the Women's Fund that we've set up target: education, health and livelihoods, because I think it's just been demonstrated time and time and again, if women's well-being in each of those 3 areas is improved, sort of supports them, but obviously ripples out quite substantially. Beijing Plus 25, until you mentioned it yesterday, to my disgrace, I'd actually forgotten about it, and then I did a flurry of research, but I know now that yesterday that was marked at UNGA, and 25 years since the ground-setting Beijing conference for women's rights. How involved is UNHCR into those sort of broader movements around women's rights and progress?
You know, on a very sad note, this has hit home personally. As you know, I'm from the United States, and we lost a legend when it comes to human rights last week with Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And she's another reason why I think I may be sitting before you today with regard to the opportunities I had because of her work. Beijing Plus 25, Beijing in particular, was hugely instrumental in terms of putting gender equality, gender equity at the center of what UNHCR does. It shaped something that we put together a year ago, December, called the Global Compact on Refugees. And in that document, fundamentally is the gender equality piece, where women are at the center of what we do as an organization, empowering, as I mentioned earlier, in charge of their own decisions, shaping what it is that we do to protect and aid, and fundamentally changing the way that we communicate and design our programs to ensure that women are in leadership positions as are men. So this fundamentally is important to us. It changed the way we plan, the way we program, the way we implement. And so even if it's not on the largest world stage, it's part of every aspect of what we do as an organization.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm going to come back with some questions later, but I'm just going to turn to Nabila now. I just wanted to talk to you, Nabila. You have an extraordinary story, and you are very much of the voice and the lived experience, obviously, of refugee women. Nabila, I'm sure you're happy for me to share the sort of rudimentary facts of your story. You had to flee Syria with your 2 children. You were settled in Australia not so long ago. You now live in Sydney and work as a case manager for the wonderful refugee support agency, Settlement Services International, whose headquarters are just a few kilometres from my home. And I've seen that organisation grow from a very small organisation to a really broad-ranged refugee support service. Nabila, I'm just waiting for you. You there? Yep, thank you. You can hear me loud and clear. Could you start from the beginning and just tell us before the war in Syria, what were you doing and what was life like where you lived in Damascus?
First of all, it's a pleasure to be with you today. Really, I'm happy, and I'm happy to share my story because I know how much is important to share these life stories for everyone. Honestly, in Syria, I used to live a good life. I was a teacher. I have my job. I have my life. It was peaceful there. Like, we have our freedom. We were able to do things. And honestly, like, I've never thought to leave my country or migrate to different places. So we were used to live a comfortable life. Like, we have things. Of course, we miss things, but at the have enough to live, like education, healthcare, all these things, basic needs for everyone. It was available in Syria. But then when you need, as everyone know, the war came and things changed 180%, and everything became very, very bad. And like, everyone was devastated with what's happening in Syria and how terrorism attacked us and the consequences of this war, which affects every single person and especially children. It was very bad for children and for their moms, and affects badly on them. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was something very close to your heart, wasn't it? Both as a mother, but you're also a teacher by training. What age of children did you teach?
I used to teach 15, 16 years old, which is teenager age. And really, you know, when you see what they have been through and how their hopes, their dreams are vanishing in front of them, and they start losing hope, no motivation to do things. And then this leads to different things also, like people, they are not motivated, they are not working, and you feel with no hope, like you're living, but you know, there is no future, no security, no peaceful. And as we said, like the main things, like everyone is looking at, like your education, basic things, it was very hard. And you know, like when you see these teenagers losing hope, it's very hard. It's hard to break it. And regardless of the mental.
Yeah, as you were living there and things were deteriorating, you know, and I think I've spoken to a lot of people, you know, people are always hopeful that it will get better and, you know, whatever. But of course, in Syria, it hasn't. So what was the sort of final catalyst for you to leave Syria with your family for safety in Lebanon?
Honestly, as you said, like at the beginning, everyone, we said, no, it takes time, then things will become better. And then one day when the terrorists attacked my village, I used to live in Damascus, the capital city of Syria, and I have my village, Malula. And one day, I can't forget that day, is the 8th of September, 2014. They attacked our village and they were killing people randomly, that everyone was in danger. And I still remember my kid's face. And you know how they were terrified, they were very afraid. And then we need to flee, and we went to Damascus. Also, my house was destroyed because of bombs, so I have to stay with some neighbors, like friends, as a shelter. And these things like lead me to something like, this is not the life I want for my kids. Because every time we were waiting to hear another devastating story, kidnapped everywhere. Like me, myself, my uncle has been kidnapped, and till now we have nothing about him. We worked a lot, we tried a lot, different things. So that's why my husband was hurt in his back. And also things became very, you know how things affected, because when you come through war, even the family relation, it will be affected, and women especially, they will get all the burdens on their shoulders. So I made my decision. I said, I need to make it. I need to decide. I need to support my children first and support myself. Then I make my mind and decided to flee to Lebanon. Hopefully, like we can find better life there. And yeah, we crossed, because you know, for between Syria and Lebanon, it's easy to go. You don't need a visa. You need nothing. But at the same time, you have only around 2 weeks to stay there because of the war, and then you need to apply for official papers. And honestly, when I flew to Lebanon, I said, yeah, that's good. Now I'm in a safe place, no bombs, no terrorists. That's good for my kids. But then I came back to face but different challenges from different kinds, you know. And here really it was, and that's why I think to be a refugee, it's not something easy, because that's something you don't choose, something you're forced to do. To leave your country as a refugee, you know, you're forced to do that. It's not your own choice to do it. This is something affects you emotionally and also financially, because what happened in Syria, because of war, I lost my job. And I stayed a period of time without no job, because if I want, I need to make a choice. Either I stay in my country and put my life's risk, my children's lives at risk, even myself, because you're not allowed at that time to work with government. If you are with the government, it means you're against terrorism. You know, you can't be neutral according to those people. And that was the hardest part for me. So I flew to Lebanon, and I stayed for a short period of time, and then I found myself, oh my God, challenges started, and it was very hard. No shelter, no schooling for my children, no job, financially suffering. And I used to live a respectful life, you know. It's not easy for you to move and then to beg things. So people are nice. I thank the kindness of every person who supported me there. But then I said, no, I have to stand. I have to rely on myself and to start. So I started looking for work. Unfortunately, you know, that's something education. If you have a degree and you go to another country, it's very hard to get that degree recognized or to utilize what you have. So you need to look at anything just to survive. And for me, I worked as a cleaner. I cleaned stairs in buildings, wherever really. In Lebanon, they used to hire people to clean their houses. So I worked as a cleaner, and I was lucky to find the work also at a bakery shop. And also it's cleaning and helping with things, because I'm not good at cooking that much. So yeah, it was very hard, but I managed it, and I managed to rent an apartment. Only it's not apartment, it's only one room with a small kitchen and bathroom to live with my 2 children, which also impacted them a lot. But that's, and you know, sometimes in this journey,
No, go on, Nabila, please.
Just I think, like in this journey, sometimes you take decision you don't want to make, but you make it because you have to. And one of them, like my children, they didn't go to school. They stayed at home. Like I go to work and they are locked at home, doing nothing, and really they lose even motivation to do things. So
Yes, because when we spoke the other day, and of course one of the purposes of the Leading Women's Fund and why we've invited it, and are very happy so many great women have joined us today, we're asking what we describe as the founding 50 members of the Leading Women's Fund to commit $250 every 4 weeks, or $3,000 over 12 months towards the fund, which is enough to provide a refugee woman in Jordan with financial support, enabling her and her family to be able to pay rent, pay the utilities costs, buy food, and as Nabila has spoken about, you know, the importance of putting children into school. But when we spoke, Nabila, you had none of that support, you know. You were on your own, but what would it, and I'm asking this, how would it have changed your life in Lebanon in that period had you had that financial support at that time?
Honestly, first of all, as you said, like for renting, because to rent flat or anything, it's very expensive. And also for utilities, because it's very, like sometimes, you know, you need to like, how can I say, even for electricity, you need to think about it when you utilize electricity, like how much it's gonna cost me. So you minimize things. Even you like sometimes you turn off lights early just to save some energy, which is very hard. Also, like for food, for me, I used to give my children the basics. which is not good. Like if I want to buy fruit, honestly, I think not once, 2, 3, 4 times before I can buy, because I can't afford even to buy fruits for my children. You know, the children, they need good food to raise, like they need to be nutrition, it's different things. I think this would help me a lot. And also at the same time for schooling, because like there are some schools, even if they don't want to take little fees, I wasn't able to afford that. Or just to put my kids for any activity for 2 or 3 hours a day. That, I think this assistance it means a lot. And it helps a lot. Yeah. And even like I remember I used to, yeah, I'm sorry. No, just save, you know, sometimes I used to save money by walking long distance, just not to pay for a taxi or, you know, transport, just to save this little amount of money. I know maybe the people, they say, oh, it's nothing. But for me, when you are a refugee in another country, it means every penny it means to you.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And I know we've got such a short time here with 4 great guests, so I'm going to move along, but I'm getting lots of sort of questions from women who've joined us. Nabila saying, how are you doing now, and how are your kids, and what's happening to you? So maybe if you could give us a quick update. Yes.
Yeah, honestly, I will be quick. I'll give good news now, because honestly, when I came, Australia is a nice country. Thank you very much for them. Give me this chance to me and my children. And you know, in Australia, if you work hard, you get what you want. And I started, and thanks for SSI, Settlement Service International Organization, they assisted me, because when I came, I have my own case manager who assisted me at the beginning, and then they give me a chance to be as a bilingual guide with them, because I speak Arabic and English, to assist refugee. And you know, because I have this experience, I was very, very interested to do it. And then when they found this potential and they found like, okay, Nabila, she can do something else, they give me a higher position as a support worker, and I start, because for SSI, they are not looking at immediate needs only, or immediate settlement needs. And that's what I like most. And I have a chance to work with the women program with them. And now I'm a case manager. We are working on empowering women. So I'm happy, honestly, and I'm proud, because I want to empower every single lady I can. And my kids now, they are settled, and thank God they are motivated again. They are studying. My son has a plan to be a policeman. And my youngest son, he's thinking, hopefully he will be an engineer. So I'm happy, really. I'm here.
Great. Thank you. And that's made us all feel happy, and we can feel the empowerment and energy that you are spreading out there, Nabila. Thank you so much. Now I'm just going to come to Irene, you know, head of Zatri refugee camp. And one of the reasons the Leading Women's Fund has focused on women in Jordan is because of the cash assistance program, and I wanted to talk about that with you. But I know you have a sort of long background, Irene, working with UNHCR, and one of the questions, and I'm going to start off with it, is why are there so many women and children as refugees? And then we'll come to your work in Zatri.
Thank you, Naomi, and good morning to everyone again. There are many women and children in the refugee population, by the verge that in displaced populations, these are the most vulnerable group that are there. And these are the group that are also very much affected immediately during any kind of conflict. And Nabila has shared her experience with us, and we've heard also from many other women that have crossed the borders, for example, here in Jordan, where we have the highest households are female-headed household. So women and their vulnerability and the support that they require during that very difficult time forces them amongst very many tight and difficult decisions that they have to make to flee. And many a times men remain behind for many things, including protecting their family, their homes, their properties, and women and children have to head off. They're affected in very many ways within the undertakings as heads of family. And most of the time, for their protection of their children, most of them that I have spoken with, their first answer is, for the protection of my children and my family, I had to leave. So we find that they still remain the biggest group amongst the displaced population. And we see it here in Zaatari camp, we see it in Jordan and in many other countries that we've worked with in the UNHCR, and myself having worked in Bangladesh, in Yemen. I also had a chance to work in other countries like Afghanistan too.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to talk about Zaatari now, but I know I had a few questions about our work in Bangladesh. So you've just mentioned that you were there, so we're going to grab all that knowledge from you later on in the discussion. Thank you. But can you describe for all of us who don't know the situation in Jordan, what it is like for refugees at the moment? And then, you know, we'll come to Zaatari and the support for women there.
In Zaatari camp, we have a population of about 80,000 refugees that are living here, with the majority being women, over 55% of the population, actually female. And the biggest demography that we have are female-headed households here in the camp. We have seen a great change since when the camp was established. And I have been privileged and honored to serve here since 2013 in various capacities in Zaatari camp, and now as the head of the sub-office and head of Zaatari camp for UNHCR. A lot of activities in terms of engagement of women and girls have been anchored into our work here, looking at our protection services as well as community-based protection. I actually liked the example that was shared about how the camps are set in a way that sometimes they're done so quick that the aspects that really affect women and girls can be overlooked. And the example on just electricity is one that I hold passionately in a Zaatari camp, because one of the initial engagements I had with women here in the camp was how we can address the issue of electricity so that it can not only be safe for the camp residents, but also the security that comes along with it. So we had electricity lines that were running all over the camp, and it was heading during winter time. And I still recall having this meeting with a group of women, and they told me, if you have just poles that we can lift up the lines from the ground, we will work on that. And this was in one of the districts in the camp, District 3. I remember that quite vividly. And this is how the birth and the story of how the enhancement of the use of electricity started changing in Zaatari camp, all the way to what we have today, where we have the solar power plant here providing almost 16 hours of electricity. It's a true example of how women can be at the center of decision making. Mm-hmm. So we've seen lots of changes. Women have also been engaged fully here on education of their children. We've seen them empowering their families. The psychosocial situation of the family has very much anchored on the fact that women have really taken the forefront in ensuring that their family members and everything that they are doing is really to the benefit of the family in totality. Mm-hmm. And so we've seen quite a good progress in the camp. When I came also, we had the tents that were in the camp, but now progressively they are shelters, and these shelters have actually taken a different dimension where refugees really worked with us in sharing some of the coping mechanisms that they had taken into place. And we worked with them moving from the communal on kitchen to kitchens within their own households, from communal wash facilities to wash facilities that are in their own household. So we've seen quite a lot of changes. Zaatari Camp has taken up also lots of innovative approaches and innovative activities. We have a GIS team here, Geographic Information group of refugees that is fully run by the refugees themselves, in addition to many other innovative projects that we've done.
And you had two great projects you were speaking about before, apart from the Power Girls. I'm calling them who are sort of getting the electricity and power going. But the Tiger Girls, was a group that you also had a lot of involvement in. Yeah. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Yes. On one of my passion personally, as a woman, but also having been honored and humbled to be in a position of managerial decision making, is to see how I can make a difference, how I can bring that sense of belonging and that sense of healing for people that I interact with at personal level as well as at work level. And the cause of women and young girls is also something that's very passionate to me as Irene. And I think I shared a bit with some few friends and colleagues that growing up in my family, one of the things that my parents installed in us was that there was no difference between me and my brothers. And I am truly proud of that. Coming from, I'm Kenyan, coming from Kenya, I've been given this opportunity where I am today because they installed that in me. And I share this passion every day in everything I do. So we have this program where we work with young girls, adolescent age, from age 13 towards just a young adulthood at about age 18. The focus of working with these young girls is really to enhance their leadership skills, their confidence skills within what they're doing in their community. And on the protection side, we work with them to ensure that these girls who would be at risk for many protection issues, especially under child protection, for example, risk of dropping out of school, as was mentioned also with the Deputy High Commissioner, that we still have a very big group of young girls at risk of school, of dropping out of school, as well as at risk of early marriage. So we work with the Tiger Girls, which means these inspiring girls enjoy reading, working with them through. Each group of 10 girls have one coach, and they work with the girls all through. We have seen a very big difference. I can tell you personally, and actually yesterday I saw them doing some painting and artwork. They are participating fully in their community. There is one girl I remember vividly was very shy at the beginning when she joined this group, but a few months when I met her, she was like, hi, my name is so, and she was talking to me and sharing her experience. And I was like, wow, I wouldn't be doing that at your age. She was so full of power in herself. But this group of girls are really inspiring. They are currently the champions of the robotics in Jordan. They practiced 3 weeks and they joined the national robotic competition in Jordan. And I'm pleased to share that the champions, the female champions of the robotic competition, are in Zaatari Camp. It really makes me proud. Very proud of them. Yes.
Congratulations. And I hope when you get to talk to those girls, you bring them all the good wishes from us in Australia.
Definitely, definitely.
We're right behind When we spoke, Irene, we were talking about, we're asking women to join up as a founding 50 member of the Leading Women Fund, contributing $250 a month.
Yes.
And we spoke about what that actually means. And I wanted you to describe for the women who will be receiving it in Jordan, you know, what is the value of that money in their everyday life?
Really, the value is so big. It's so transformational for the women. Many of them have shared with us that just by receiving this cash support, it has helped them so much within the family. And the first and foremost is just that well-being and that peace of mind as a woman taking care of the family. Nabila mentioned about paying of rent. I couldn't emphasize enough. It's really one of the things that comes up every now and then when we speak with the woman. Paying the rent, knowing that your children can sleep in a roof, that they are safe without any fear of anything. This is so critical. And having, I chat with them every time I have the chance to meet with them. And they tell me, Irene, you know, just to be able to sleep and know that I can do that, that is my first strength, because I can wake up the next day having that strength to do other things and to have that strength in me to work in other things that usually would have given me so much stress. And we do understand what the impact of stress is when you do not know how you are going to pay your rent. The other thing is the support to the well-being of their children in terms of food, in terms of education. Believe me, just by the cost of $10, it means a child can afford transportation to go to school for a whole week. What can we do with $10? $10 is practically walking into a restaurant and getting a burger or, you know, a pack of chips. With a pack of fries, with a pack of a burger, a child in Jordan can go to school for 1 week. This is what it means for the woman here. It is so critical for them. And that contribution really, really means a lot for them. Another thing that I observed, for example, in the area of the decisions that they can make every day, and Nabila mentioned that, and this I have seen myself, is the decisions they will take on the amount of food that they have to buy for the child. This is an everyday thing. If they do not have that cash support, then they will decide to reduce the amount of food so that they can be able to pay the rent, to pay the electricity, to pay all other kind of expenses that they have. So the cash support really helps the women to be able to take the decisions that would lead them to even other protection concerns that you may have. For example, choosing which child can go to school and which child stays at home. Or which child they send for child labor, or which child or which young girl can be sent off for marriage. And these critical, very deep decisions that they take, sadly, with a very, very heavy heart, are things that we can resolve just by contributing this amount. So I can only say that that contribution is transformational for a woman here in Jordan, is transformational for a young girl here in Jordan, and for the families.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Irene, and thank you for that explanation. Now I'm coming to you, Marta, because you're the eyes and ears of us who haven't had the chance to go to Zaatari and see it, I guess, from a different perspective. And I wanted you to talk about your experience there, but you've spoken about some of the women that you've met. You've seen the cash assistance program in action there. I just wondered if you could share some of your experiences.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me along. And like Kelly, I had an experience when I headed over to Jordan in 2017 with my husband, Ben, and we were very honored and privileged to have access to these incredible women who, as everyone has explained, had a journey like Nabila's, were still sitting either in Zatri, where we did go and spend a day and caused a bit of ruckus, but also in the urban refugee settlements that they had dotted around. And one woman has come to my mind, Hadea. She had 3 children. She came with her husband, and he was working, he had a medical issue. And slowly, as the money dwindled, they had arrived in their pajamas. They intended to go back. Like Nabila said, it was never the plan that they would stay there, but they would return home. As the money dwindled, he stopped buying the medicine because he understood that his children were eating less, and he hid that from his wife until finally he passed away in his sleep. And I remember she told me this story quite stoically, and I said to her, what did you bring with you as a family? What do you have in remembrance of him? And she pulled out this brace that he would wear on his leg, and she held it and she crumpled to the floor, and she just couldn't speak or breathe. And her children came around her, and I thought, this is not the first time that they have witnessed this, because they were not traumatized by it, but rather it's this relentless reminder of what they've lost. She mentioned then that she was allowed to go onto the cash assistance program and that it changed their lives. She felt confident to let her children go to school. She had enough money to pay the rent, as everyone's talking about, but also $36 a week Australian to buy food and clothes for her kids. So for her, it was really everything that she had left. And on top of the trauma, of course, these people are in deep post-traumatic stress, and they do get home visits, which is incredible, by UNHCR. This incredible one-on-one work that everyone's been talking about. I witnessed it. They knew them directly by name. They knew their history, their children. They shared stories from last time. So there really is this individualistic, hands-on approach. The other thing that I really noticed was when they get this cash assistance, it means that they are more included in the society. If you give them vouchers, they walk up to the shop with their voucher for rice or toilet paper. And as we know, as mothers and leaders of our households and all the people listening, we know what our children need. We know what our household needs. So if you're only allowed rice or toilet paper, you'll take it because it's the voucher, but you'll sell it down the road for less than it's worth. And what happens then is the shopkeeper gets annoyed by that. And so there creates a tension. But if they have cash, they can walk in and buy what they need and have a healthy, strong relationship with that shopkeeper. And it's no problem. And they build cohesion and community. And to me, that was something that a lot of women talked about. That, and also dignity.
Yes.
The dignity to choose, the dignity to know what your family needs. And as Irene is talking about educating these young 13 to 18-year-olds about what they need, as a mother, as Nabila spoke to us, what it feels like when you can't be the woman, the mother, and give your children what they need. It is about dignity and respect. And to me, the restoring and enhancing of that in the UNHCR mandate was on the tip of everyone's tongue that I spoke to. One person at a time, restore their dignity.
Thank you. And Marty, you're very well known in Australia and globally, both in your work in film and television, for playing really strong women. I think that's fair to say. Iconic women, and we know there's probably a lot of yourself in some of those characters too, though you are an actor, I know. It's not just putting yourself forward. But how have your experiences with refugees influenced your work? And I'm thinking of your recent project on Stateless with your friend and UNHCR's Global Goodwill Ambassador, Kate Blanchett. You've got some plans for the Apple Island, I know, in terms of promoting refugee voices. But how has that sort of changed you and influenced your work?
Absolutely. Again, as Kelly said, you never forget those first meetings. You never forget their eyes and their deep integrity. So for me, I take that with me wherever I go. I had a voice quite early on when I started in Channel 7 doing publicity, and people wanted to talk about my favorite pastime, baking. You know, these are possibly interesting things, but for me, I needed to find a way to give voice to people who were voiceless, and so again, with such an honor and a privilege of being allowed into these women's homes, never taken for granted. And so I wanted to bring their stories back and authentically say that I had heard from people directly, and mainly women. And the message really was, and in fact, I've written down what Noor said to me, who was another mother that I met. Her son had completely stopped speaking. He was only 3 when they left. I met him when he was 7 and he hadn't said a word. And funnily enough, he did whisper a question to her to ask me, which was really the first time he had said anything. And I don't see that as my power, but rather his. He thought, if I whispered this question, someone in Australia or America or Geneva or Jordan will hear me. And Noor said, please do not forget me, and please keep sending money that allows us to eat. And without your help, we will be homeless. So that is my job, is to receive, bear witness, like I do with my characters pretty much, and really try and get that message across. So for my work, and obviously Stateless was a huge passion project for me. I used to visit refugees when they were here in Villawood back when I was 19. And, you know, the way that we embrace refugees needs a lot of work. And so I felt Stateless was a really good record of that time when things weren't being done in the right way with the right policy, in my opinion. So it was very good to have that recorded, because it is important we record people's stories. And I would like to thank Nabila for sharing her story with us today, because I can't imagine the journey you've been on. So much respect to you.
Yes. Thank you. And look, I think from all these experiences, and I think often the challenge, I have the opportunity to visit the field. Irene, you work in the field. Nabila, you lived at Marta, you know, you visited. Kelly, you head up the organisation. But often when I talk to people, it's how can they connect and how can they help? And there are many ways, and we'll send some information out to people after this about, you know, volunteering and other kinds of support. But I think why I love the Leading Women's Fund trial is because as a founding 50 member, you also get to co-create and trial UNHCR's new Connecting Worlds app. And this app, which you download from the Apple Store, will pair you with a Syrian refugee woman in Jordan, who's head of her household and receiving direct financial support from UNHCR. And for me, this is a unique way for both women as a trial in Jordan and women in Australia to connect through the, I guess, you know, technology providing a platform where you can be on an equal platform there, I think. And we have trialled it with some women already, both here in Australia and in Jordan. UNHCR goes through quite a scrupulous process in terms of supporting women and selecting women into the trial in Jordan. Obviously, we have issues around language and whatever, and all that is mediated through UNHCR. But I know from the women who've trialled it here, you know, just sharing stories as mums, as women, talking about, none of us seem to be cooks on this webinar, but a lot of recipe sharing and so forth, and deeper stuff, and friendships are forming. And for me, that's the first time in my work that we've been able to really promote that engagement with the many people, you know, who want to really engage with other people and in this cause. Kelly, for UNHCR, it's both a first and it's a world first. Do you want to talk a bit more about the Connecting Worlds app and its importance to UNHCR?
Sure, Naomi, but I just have to tell you how inspired I am early this Thursday morning. What an incredible panel. I'm really moved. So thank you, Nabila and Marta and Irene, for what you're doing. I'm very excited about this Connecting Worlds app, and I have to tell you, I'm a new user. I piloted it just a few days ago, and I'm paired up with a Syrian woman from Dara named Mayada, and she has 4 kids from the ages of 7 to 13. She left Syria in 2014. She lost her husband there. He was killed. Her parents are still living there. And we are having the most amazing conversation about her life in Syria, about her children, about life in Jordan. We've shared pictures, actually. I have a piece that the last time I was in Syria, unfortunately, was back in 2010, before the conflict. And I have a painting in my living room of Damascus, old Damascus. And so sharing that painting and then her sharing photos of her neighborhood has been a wonderful connection, and including, I mean, it's as you say, it's a way to engage in a very different way. You can listen to us on the screen, tell you about our experiences sitting with incredibly motivating, passionate, dedicated women. But here's an opportunity to actually connect with the family, hear the personal struggles, but also what gives them hope about the future. And in this case, all 4 of her children are girls. And an education and ways to make sure that they continue their schooling is incredibly important to her. So Naomi, you said we're careful about privacy. We're careful about making sure that the families remain safe. So there is a screening process for outgoing messages and incoming messages. And it's a really unique opportunity, and we have not scaled it yet, but we're hoping really through this Leading Women initiative and what you're doing in Australia in particular will help us be able to test it to even a greater level so that we could start using this in other parts of the world as well. Because I think the way to change hearts and minds is to feel that personal connection with people. You know, Mayada is like me. I'm a mother of 2. My kids are in school, they're teenagers. And you know, obviously very different circumstances, but we share much more than our differences. So I would really encourage everyone to download the app and get involved. Thanks.
Okay, thanks so much, Kelly. Sadly, we only have a few more 4 minutes and I'm going to have to do a wrap, and we have many more questions. So I'm hoping we can repeat this with you, Kelly, as Deputy High Commissioner, and Irene, Nabila and Marta, because I think as all the feedback here is incredible women with incredible experiences and humanity to share with us. So thank you very much. I just want to thank everyone else who's joined us today, and I can see from your comments that you have been inspired. I was hoping that was the case, but I think it's definitely the case, and I'm really also hoping that you want to come on this journey with us to promote gender equity and opportunity for refugee women and girls. Together, I truly believe we can create a life-changing and long-lasting impact in the lives of both Australian women and displaced women. I think, as I've always said, as head of Australia for UNHCR, and I've met so many fantastic women in my work who are, you know, strong, resilient, smart, entrepreneurial, and my job and all of us at A4U is to give them the resources to really achieve their full potential. And I know where we have, they've just run with it. We have space for just 50 founding members of this program. After this webinar, you'll all be receiving an email from me and our team, and telling you more about it. And if you want to join up, how to do that. The spaces are filling up. I'm very happy to say we've just got 28 spaces left for this part of this phase of the project. But of course, if we have more than that, we will find a way, I am sure, with the support of UNHCR. But please keep an eye out for this email. We know that when we empower women, we empower the community. I think it's a critical time, as we've said, in the world now, that women really stand up for each other, and we're doing that today. So thank you for standing with us and with refugee women and girls, and goodbye, and I look forward to when we all meet again. And again, thank you to our wonderful panel.
Thank you.
Thanks.